Hello. Testing. Can you hear me? Testing. Testing. Hello. Can you hear me? Hi. Hi. Are you still here? Or are you sleeping from the start? Hi. Can anyone answer me? Hello. Can you hear my voice? Hello. Vivian. Can you hear my voice? Can you see my screen now? Perfect. So let's wait other girls. Do you bring your book? Good. Because I'm clear. So you can turn your book to page 162 and wait for the other girls. We are having the break. Oh, got a snare. And take your time. Okay, so please just help me after all of you get into the chat room. Let's listen to a song first. 想聽咩歌？Hi. So are all of you already inside the chat room? So you have 31. So one is missing. So any girl absent today? Who? Find me the remaining girl. Find me the remainder girl. Number 4, are you here? Number 4, are you here? Here. Wait. Who haven't got in? Alright. So all of you have already got in. So now you can turn to your book to page 170. turn to your book to page 170. Okay, so focus. I'm very serious. So turn to your book to page 170. So yesterday we have talked about the conditions for equilibrium, or you can understand it, the conditions for it to move the object at rest. Okay, so there are two conditions if object is at rest. So the first one, the net force equals to 0. So if the object is not at rest, then the net force is 0. And then the net moment is 0. Okay, so to make sure it's not rotating. So the net force is 0. So it means that it's not moving from one place to the other place. So for the net moment equals to 0, which means the object is not rotating. Okay, so here are the two conditions. So, and today we will start to do some exercise about the equilibrium. Okay, so first, here is the diagram. Okay, so this guy is walking on the light beam. Okay, so the light beam means we can ignore the weight of the beam. Okay, so, and there are two strings for supporting this guy. There are two strings for supporting this guy. So if the question asks you to find F1 and F2, then what can you do? So we can apply the conditions which net force equals to 0. And then the net moment about any point equals to 0. Okay, so about any point equals to 0. And then now we see what to do. Okay, so in this case, there are three forces, right? In this case, there are three forces. And then we know that this beam is now at rest. So not this guy is at rest. The beam is at rest. Okay. In the other words, the net force acting on the beam is 0. Okay. So the net force acting on the beam is 0. So for the net force is 0, the force acting upward equals to the force acting downward. So the first condition gives you this equation, okay? So net force equals to 0. So that the force acting upward equals to the force acting downward, okay? As you can see, there are two unknown quantities. Okay, so if we want to find F1 and F2, then we need another equation. And for the conditions of the object at rest, the other condition is that the net moment about any point equals to 0. So we haven't used these conditions, right? So for the second conditions, we can write down another equation that we can solve these two unknown quantities. So the second statement is that net moment about any point equals to 0. In the other words, you can find any point as the pivot. So actually, you can choose this point as the pivot. Choose the locations of this guy as the pivot. Choose the rightmost point as the pivot. So in this example, we choose point O as the pivot. Okay, so we choose point O as the pivot. So you can add a small triangle here. Imagine that this is a pivot. Then which force will create the clockwise moment? Which force will create the anti-clockwise moment? In this case, F1 will bring the beam rotating clockwise, right? So this force will bring the beam rotating clockwise if point O is a pivot. So F2 will bring the beam rotate in anti-clockwise. So for the net moment equals to 0, then the clockwise moment equals to the anti-clockwise moment. And then moment equals to force times perpendicular distance. So which means F1 times C1 equals to F2 times D2. So in this case, we have two equations. So equation 1 and equation 2. And here are two unknowns that we can solve the equation. Okay, so how to apply these two conditions? So normally we use these two conditions for finding two unknown forces. Okay, So, and then you can write down the equation according to these two conditions. Okay, so and here is a very common conclusion. So you can imagine that if this guy is keep walking towards the right-hand side, if this guy keeps walking towards the right-hand side, so T1 is increasing, right? And C1 is increasing. In this case, F1 is inversely proportional to D1. So when this guy moves towards the right-hand side, then the force of T1 will be decreased, okay? So it's very easy to understand. So if this guy move away, then the force acting on the left-hand side will be lowered. In the other way, the force acting on the right-hand side will be in a higher value. Okay, so you can use these equations to explain this, and actually it's same to what you learned in primary 6. Okay, so when you learn the level rules. Okay, so some of you may not able to understand the word I did, right? So now to do the example. Okay, so you can turn to your book to page 171. You can turn to your book to page 171 to see this example. Okay, so this girl of weight 500 Newton stands on a balance beam of weight 150 Newton. Okay, so and then find the forces acting on the beams by the stand at point A and B. So for this kind of question, the first step is always to draw the free body diagram, okay? So draw the free body diagram first. So now that I give you 2 minutes to draw the free body diagram, okay? So and I will pick one of you to help me the free body diagram, okay? So now you can take your time, draw the free body diagram first. Okay, so let's pick one of you. Number 18, Nicole. Hello, Nicole.
Yes.
Hello. So the first question is that how many forces acting on the beam? How many forces acting on the beam?
I haven't finished.
Just ask you how many forces. So you don't need to tell me the correct.
其實下面有 solution 咯。
知啊，都可以問下，係嘛？作為一個正直嘅你，應該 cover the solution and then to do it on your own.
4.
Okay, so there are 4 forces, right? So for these questions, we are discussing about the beam. So the 4 forces are acting on the beam. So So the 4 forces will be the supporting forces acting on point A and point B. Okay, so the weight of this girl, 500 Newton. And then the beam is 150 Newtons, right? So the beam has a weight of 150 Newtons. So the beam is acting on the center. The weight of the beam is acting on the center. So it's 2 meters from point B and point A. Okay. So on the box, we choose point 8 as the pivot. Okay. So we have already drawn the free body diagrams, right? We know there are 4 forces. Then the second step will be choose a pivot. Okay. So according to the statement, the net moment about any point is 0. So actually, you can choose any point of the pivot. So you can choose point A, the foot of the girls, the middle point of the beams, and point B as the pivot. Okay, so you can choose any one of them as the pivot. So in your book, you choose point 8 as the pivot. Okay, and here, so we choose point, we try to choose point B as the pivot. Okay, so if point B is the pivot, then we can put a small triangle here. We can choose a small triangle here. Okay, so and then the first step is to write down the two equations. To write down the two equations according to the conditions of equilibrium. So the first condition is net force equals to 0. So which means the force acting upward equals to the force acting downward. Okay, so it's very obvious that FA plus FB equals to 500 plus 150. Okay, this is the equations written based on net force equals to 0, and then net moment equals to 0. Now point B is the pivot. So I give you 1 minute. Give you 1 minute to write down the equations while point B equals to the pivot. 上呢個 online course 嘅1分鐘真係好漫長。Okay, so I'll explain to you first, and then you have free exercise and you can do it on your own. So if we choose point B as the pivot, then we need to see which forces will bring the beam in clockwise. So which forces will bring the beam in anti-clockwise. So let's see it one by one. So if this is the fixed point, then force 8 will bring the beam in clockwise, right? So this 500 newtons will bring the beams in anti-clockwise. This 150 newtons will bring the beams in anti-clockwise. So the clockwise torque equals to the anti-clockwise torque. So FA times force equals to 500 newtons times 3 plus 150 newtons times 2. Okay, so now we have two equations, and then we can solve the two unknown quantities. So for this kind of question, so normally we will choose the rightmost point or the leftmost point as the pivot, so that we can eliminate the moment of one force. So you may have the question that there are 4 forces, right? So why there are only 3 moments created by the force? So why there is no moment created by force B? So can anyone answer me except Mr. Wilford and Mr. Lawrence? So number 16. So why force B? So number 26. Why force B doesn't create any moment in this case? Hello, hello. Hi, are you still here? Number 26. Number 26, are you still here? Don't sleep. Wake up. Number 26. So can you tell me why force B doesn't create any moment? Why force B doesn't create any moment? Hello? Can anyone help her? Why force B doesn't create any moment? Why force?
Maybe because it is the pivot, so it doesn't create any moment.
I don't think you are number 26 啊。我都灰型㗎你把聲。Since force B pass，
世界都話我把聲好型嘅。
So the torque equals to force times distance, right? So in this case, the distance between the force and the pivot is 0. So FB times 0 equals to the moment created. So it's 0. So in this case, the force B pass through this pivot. So it won't create any force. It won't create any moment. So the two equations will be FA plus FB equals to 650. And then for FA equals to 1,800. Okay. So from this equation, then we can get FA equals to 1,800 over 4, which is 450 Newton. And you'll find that it's same to the answers on your books, right? So in your book, we choose point A as the pivot. So here, we choose point B as the pivot, and you will actually find the same answer. So if you like, you can choose any point as the pivot, but I recommend you to choose either A or B to be the pivot, since we can cancel the moment of one force, okay? So now we'll have a summary about this kind of question. So whenever you see this kind of questions, then you need to draw the free body diagram first. You need to draw the free body diagram, and then to choose a pivot, to choose the pivot you like. And then the first step is to write down the two equations. So based on net force equals to 0, net moment equals to 0. And then the last step is to solve it, okay, so based on your math knowledge, okay. So if you are very bad in math, then GG, okay. So do you have any questions? 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 Do you have any?
No.
So if you really have questions, then you can inbox me or ask Mr. Wilford. So now you can turn to your book to page 175. You can turn your book to page 175. Turn your book to page 175. Do question 9, 10, and 11. Okay? To page 175, question 9, 10, and 11. Okay, so do not look at the screen. Okay, so I will solve it on your own, and please solve it. I will solve it on my own. Okay, so and you focus on the book and solve it on your own. Okay, so if you can't really understand, then you can work with your classmates. So don't forget the 3 steps. Draw the 3 or the diagram. Second step, choose pivot. The last step, write down the 2 equations. Okay. So I give you 15 minutes, and I will solve it too. Do not tell time my answer. Hi. Hello. Do you need any help? I give you 2 more minutes, and I will pick one of the girls to tell me the answer. So if you want to check if your free body diagram is correct or not, then she can see the screen. Okay, so and then the weight of this platform is acting in the middle, right? So here is 1.5 meters. And now number 21. Number 21. Number 21. So can you help me the answer? Number 21. Have you finished the calculation? Number 21. Are you still here?
Yes.
Are you still here?
Yes.
So can you help me the answer? Hi.
你啊，答啦。
我乜嘢都聽唔到。Hi, hi, hi. Number. Oh, okay, okay, okay. Did you bring your calculator?
Go.
哎呀，等 GG 啦，手指啊。
冇名字嘅選擇啊，大計數機。
Okay. So girls, here is the solution. Okay, so 唔好嫌我煩啊。咁樣再講一次，重要嘅事講3次嘛，啱啱講2次。Okay, so here is the last one. So and you see these calculations, draw the free body diagram. Okay, so I draw the free body diagram. Here are the 4 forces. So and then choose a pivot. Okay, so I want point A to my pivot. So and then write down the 2 equations. The first equation's net force is 0. The force acting upward equals to the force acting downward. Okay, so and then the second equation's net moment equals to 0. Clockwise moment equals to the anti-clockwise moment. Okay, so and then we need to see the force one by one. So this is the pivot. Force free E. Okay. Okay. So force speed will make the platform in anti-clockwise. Sorry. Okay. So and then sorry. So force speed will make the platform move in anti-clockwise. Since this one is the pivot. Okay. So it makes it into anti-clockwise. And then these two forces moving make the platforms move in clockwise. Make the platforms move in clockwise. And now we need to know the distance, right? So the anti-clockwise moment is Fb times perimeter times the perpendicular distance to the pivot. And then the clockwise moment is the weight of this guy times 1 meter. The weight of this guy times 1 meter. The weight of the platform times 1.5 meters. The weight of the platform times 1.5 meters. Okay, so that's why we can solve Fb equals to 686.7 Newton. And as we substitute the values of Fb into the first equation, then we can find that Fa equals to AA 2.9 Newton. Okay. So although this kind of questions seem quite complicated, however, if you can memorize this three steps, then you will find that you're just doing the repeated things. Okay, so every question will be the same. And actually, you can solve exercise 9, 10, and 11 with the same way. Okay, so if you have no questions, then you can do number 10 and 11 on your own. Okay, so I won't tell you the answer. And if you really have questions, then you can ask your classmates or inbox me now. Okay, so for the girls who have no questions, do question number 10 and 11. So for those who have questions, then you can inbox me or ask your classmates first. And it's your turn to do question number 10 and 11. So if you can't finish during the ITP lesson, then they will become your homework. And I feel quite lonely. Are you still here? Okay, so then I should let you have no, yes. What's this yes for? Okay, so do question number 10 and 11. Okay, do question number 10 and 11. Yeah, move on. So for question number 10, there is hidden hint. So it's a light plant, right? So which means there is no weight for the plant. There is no weight for the, sorry. Should be question number 10. So there is no weight for the plant. Okay, so in the other words, there are only 3 forces. Okay, so there are only 3 forces. The force, supporting force here, and the reading show to the value. So, and we also call this FA. So 550 Newton. And then FB, so 250 Newton. And the question say that the separations between two balances is 2 meters. If the center of gravity, okay, so which means that the point representing this guy is located at a distance x from A, find x. Okay, so here will be x. So and then the weight of this guy. So what's the weight of this guy? Oh, sorry, I know the weight. How to find the weight of this guy? Okay, so it may be the last questions I can ask. So number 12, can you tell me the values of mg? Number 12, can you tell me the values of mg? Number 12. Number 12. With number 12. Huh? So can you tell me the values of mg? Can you tell me the values of mg? Can you tell me the values of mg? Or let's change other types of questions. So what's the first acting upward? What's the first acting upward in this case? Hello? Number 12?
800.
Huh? Yes, the first acting upward is 800, right? So the force acting upward is 800. What's the force acting downward? What's the force acting downward?
800.
Huh? The force acting downward is mg. So for mass force equals to 0, then you know that mg equals to 800. Okay, so and then you can stop x on your own. Okay, so tell me the values of x. Tell me the values of x. Hello? Have you done? Have you done? Okay, wait a minute. Have you completed this question? Number 12. Number 12. Don't sleep. Number 12. Tell me the answer. Number 12. Number 12. Number 12. Are you still here? Okay, okay, okay. Ngon, đặng bài đi rồi. Answer. Number 12. We have only 3 minutes left. 我唔想我哋之間有遺憾。Can you tell me the answer? Hello? 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 What's the answer? Hmm? Can you speak again? Hmm? Hmm. What do you mean by the air? Okay, so for other girls, if you have finished, then you can do number 11. And please help me to help this question. Clockwise, yes. If you choose a the okay, so Jasmine has already given you the hint. It's number 12, Cincy. Cincy, is that you? If we choose pawn 8 with the pivot, then MG will draw the beam into clockwise, right? 2 meters times 2,500. Here is only 250. If I choose pawn B, 2 meters times, if you choose pawn B, it's supposed to be 550 times 2 meters. If you choose pawn B as the pivot, it's supposed to be 550 times 2 meters. Because force B is now passing through pawn B, right? So it won't create any moment. Okay. Or I will there are only 1 minute left, and I will write down the answers first. So for you to choose pawn 8 as the pivot, then it is mg times x equals to fb times 2 meters. So x equals to 500 over 800. Okay, so meters. So for answering, just mean if you choose point B as the pivot, then it will be 550 times 2 meter equals to mg times y. Mg times y meter. Okay, so mg times y. So it is 1,000 over 800. Okay, so here 1,100 over 800. Okay, so in the other words, you can choose either A